Late 16th century Europe spawned the age of the madrigal. Created in Italy, these secular works, compared with the mainly religious musical pieces of the time, spread rapidly across the continent. They often focus on relatable content, such as romance, which helped to spread its popularity. The English madrigal is a prime example of the madrigal's dynamic stylizing across the continent, and how composers worked to make their own. The differences and similarities between the Italian and English madrigals can in large part be seen through the works, lives, and personalities of Thomas Morley, Thomas Weelkes, and John Wilbye, who in large part shaped and defined the English madrigal through its brief popularity in the 16th century. Let me tell you about these madrigals. It is a genre of music that is sung, normally for 3 to 6 voices set to secular poetry or literary compositions. It took hold as a popular musical genre in Italy in its time with composers like Giovanni Giacomo Gastoldi, Don Carlos Gesualdo, and Luca Marenzio. The madrigal was a product of the late Renaissance era, as musical and literary forms were expanding. These composers took these poetic and literary texts and made somber and serious works. They were also different from the music of the day because they followed strophic form and did not repeat. They were 3 composed, which means featuring different music for each stanza. It sprung forth from the 3 to 4 voice rottola, was like the French chanson in style, and used polyphony found in the motet. Although the name of madrigal was used earlier, as in the Italian Trecento madrigal, it did not become popular until used to designate what is now known as the characteristic Italian madrigal today. Although the name literally derived from the Latin matricalis, meaning maternal, also meaning service to the Mother Church, the Italian madrigal of the Renaissance flew away from the previous meaning and became synonymous with secular texts and styles of music. Its popularity reached across Europe, and its songs became specifically introduced to Germany and England by Nicholas Junge, who brought publications of the manuscripts Musica Transalpina, literally across the Alps. This was essentially a body of Italian madrigals translated into English, and where the English madrigal started. While it was Nicholas Junge that brought the madrigal across the Alps to Elizabeth in England, it was Thomas Morley that made the madrigal what it was from England at the time. This was interesting because at this time there was a lot of national pride, and the English madrigal, as brought to pass by Thomas Morley, was developed but really stolen from the Italian madrigals of the day. We can see this in one of his madrigals called Now is the Month of Maying, which is almost a complete and exact copy of Soven me ca bon tempo by Orazio Vecchi. Here it is played out.
Now is the month of Maying, when merry lads are playing. Fa la 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 la, fa la 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 la. Now is the month of Maying, when merry lads are playing. Fa la 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 la, fa la 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 la. Each with his bonny lass upon the greeny grass. La 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 la.
As you can see, the first song is about frolicking nymphs and happy young people dancing, while the Italian direct translation is not even close. It's being about time of desperation and knowing things in time. In his music book called A Plain and Easy Introduction to Practical Music, Morley stated, "If you imitate any, I would appoint to you these for guides: Alfonso Ferrabosco for deep skill, Luca Marenzio for good air and fine inventions, and John Croce with diverse others who are very good, but not so generally as good as these. This alludes to the fact that he wanted the madrigalists to follow him in using the music of the Italian madrigalists at the time. To add to that nationalistic sense of pride that he had for his country, Thomas Morley later compiled the Triumphs of Oriana, which is a publication of 25 madrigals by 23 different composers, including himself, and wrote it specifically about Queen Elizabeth, but continued using both Italian music and lyrics in his own compilations. The interesting thing about these madrigals in this compilation is it has this couplet at each of the end of them. Thus sang the shepherds and nymphs of Diana, long live fair Oriana. This is a direct translation from the Italian madrigalist Giovanni Croce, which says, Pui concordi seguir ninfa e pastori, viva la bella Dori. This couplet can be found in Young's Musica Transalpina, 2nd edition. This shows the lengths that Morley would go to take from literature that was not his own. Among the 23 madrigalists that was involved in the Triumphs of Oriana publication, Thomas Weelkes was another notable composer, along with John Wilbye. The influence of Luca Marenzio is apparent in his madrigals. He was an organist at Winchester College and later moved to Chichester Cathedral at the end of his life. He wrote a good portion of his madrigals in his early 20s, which was very impressive. He took some adventures as a composer and explored chromatic harmonies in his pieces. He really played around with chromaticism. One of the songs that he is best known for this is his O Care Thou Wilt Dispatch Me, of which is said, chromaticism was no longer a mere decoration of a clearly diatonic scheme, to be used only at moments of great emotional stress. It became an integral part of his, Weelkes' composer's style, to be used continuously. In this example, one can see that he employed chromatics in every voice. Here is O Care Thou Wilt Dispatch Me. The poetry that he used evoked contempt, love, hurt, physical outbursts like oh and ah and sighs, which lent itself to emotions of pain. The first few lines of O Care Thou Wilt Dispatch Me show this. Quote, O care thou wilt dispatch me, if music do not match thee. So deadly thou dost sting me, mirth only help can bring me. Additionally, the ending of his compilation, See Sorrows Now, also has a similar sentiment. Quote, might be extinct to end my sorrows so, which now are such as nothing can release, whose life is death, whose sweet each change of sour, and eke whose bell reneweth every hour. He uses madrigals to express deeply felt emotion to a degree that had not been previously done, and he did this very well. As mentioned, John Wilbye was also one of the great madrigalists at the time, and his madrigals took a different turn than their styling, Morley, and Weelkes. He had an intuitive sense about him in his settings and use of English prose. He was a master of rhythm. It is believed by some scholars that his life influenced and set the tone for some of his madrigals. He lived with those that employed him and considered a respected member of gentry. Although he never married, it is believed that he was infatuated with his employer, Lady Rivers. His relationship with her and the Kyteson family that employed him was more than familial. However, she did not return the affection he gave her. The unshared love is very apparent in one of Wilby's madrigals entitled Lady, Your Words Do Spite Me.
Kiss and delight me, kiss and delight me.
Wilbye produced more serious madrigals than all the other English madrigals lists. Of his 66 madrigals he composed, most of them were about being unhappy and about unrequited love. Sweet Honey-Sucking Bees is a good example of this. It reads at the end, all sweets are hard to get, sting not her soft lips. Oh, beware of that, for if one flaming dart come from her eye, was never dart so sharp, ah, then you die. Was never dart so sharp, ah, then you die. His madrigals were more refined and took on a prevailing tone. This set them apart and brought artistic unity throughout his pieces. As you can see, these three men, Thomas Morley, Thomas Weelkes, and John Willoughby, played a big part in developing the English madrigal at the time. Through their varying style, influenced by their different motivations, thought processes, and backgrounds and personalities, the English madrigal developed and shifted, uniquely standing out as one of the most popular forms of music of the late 16th century.